We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Thursday. Again, another hell of a day yesterday. A lot of things to talk about. Donald Trump was back in court, but it may be the last time, well, second to last time, that he'll be in court in New York. He was pissing and moaning. Latitia James and the judge are getting tired of it. So some things are going to happen. And Donald Trump isn't happy. He's starting to feel the pressure. He's starting to flail a little bit. And it's not a good look for him. He doesn't look good. He's starting to break down. He's starting to melt down. And we've just got started with this case, plus we've got 4 other indictments. Donald Trump, there's no way he makes it to 2024. He is going to be made to listen to and witness his crimes and criminality, and he's not going to like it. He's going to try to speak up or speak out, and the judges and the prosecutors are going to knock him down. He's in for a nightmare year coming up through 2024. Donald Trump, as a narcissist, loves having control. He's a control freak. But in all these situations, he has zero control. He has people telling him what to do. And the worst part of it is they, for the most part, are women. And not only women, but they happen to be women of color. Judge Chutkan, Fani Willis, Latitia James. It's not going well for Donald Trump. And yesterday was a bad day. We'll get started on the show. We've got one email, just one email, then we can talk about the news of the day. This email starts out, "Hi, Boomer, I'm going to call the next speaker now." He's predicting who the next Speaker of the House will be. Elise Stefanik. She's crazy enough for the lunatics and polished enough for the rest of them. And she's a woman, so she's somehow less scary. I think they're going to be so embarrassed by what just happened that they'll coalesce around her to get to the threshold. Jordan may flop around a little bit, but he's just too much chaos for the moderates. Plus, he might get indicted. Scalise has cancer, and he looks a little rough. Just my prediction, using my usual methodology of too few facts mixed with too much gut feel with a dash of anecdotal info. Best, Jeff. Well, you may not be too far off. I mean, it's interesting about Kevin McCarthy being voted out of office. Seems like the Republicans are angry at the Democrats for not saving him. Seriously, they seem to be irritated by this. Why in the world would the Democrats save Kevin McCarthy? He lied to us. He threw us under the bus. He did everything he could to harm not only the Democratic Party, but this country. So now the Democrats are supposed to help him out. Honestly, I think that the Democrats, to a large extent, know what was going to happen. He will get kicked out, and then it'll be nothing but chaos in the Republican Party. They've got to decide who is going to be the next Speaker of the House. The real question should be, who can get 218 votes? And I can't pick one. I just can't pick one. There isn't anybody who can get 218 votes, largely because the Republican Party is so divided, especially in the House of Representatives. You're not going to get anybody to agree on anything. Now, of course, Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan have said they're running for the Speaker of the House. Well, you two go on ahead. Jim Jordan can't get 218 votes. Steve Scalise can't get 218 votes. And to be honest with you, I don't even think Elise Stefanik can get it. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I saw something interesting. And I think this is a little crazy too. But Jamie Raskin was talking on the steps of the Capitol to a media outlet. And he was saying that they're going to mess around and not going to be able to accomplish anything. And he said, listen, we've got 212 votes on the Democratic side. A lot of the normal Republicans are just upset as could possibly be with the chaos this all created. They're getting tired of it. He seemed to think that there might be 5 or 6 Republicans that might just say, fuck it, let's make Hakeem the Speaker of the House. I find that hard to believe. But if they did it, it would be very interesting. And the thing about it is, I think Hakeem would be relatively fair to both sides. As a Speaker of the House, you got to kind of play the middleman and help in the negotiation and the compromise and all that stuff. Nobody that's ever going to be a Republican understands that, but Hakeem Jeffries understands the situation. And whatever he doesn't know, well, Nancy Pelosi's there to give him some inside information. The biggest thing about this is you and I don't know how this is all going to shake out. Who's going to end up being the Speaker of the House, or who has a chance to be Speaker of the House? We don't know. But you know what's more frightening is the Republicans don't know either. I told you when they were going to do this vote to vacate Kevin McCarthy from the Speaker of the House positions, I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think they had the balls to do it because I knew they had nowhere to go after they did it. So I thought somehow they'd pull this out. And apparently they were thinking that somehow the Democrats would save the day. But Kevin McCarthy had talked so much shit about the Democrats, they said, fuck you. We're going to watch you flounder. And I think the Democrats, to a large extent, are willing to do that. They know that this is going to be a shit show, and it could go on for an extended period of time. The longer it goes, the bigger problem it is for the 2024 election for the Republicans. So let them implode, let them destroy themselves. But while that's going on, then our House of Representatives is accomplishing nothing. And we have at least one more thing we need to accomplish. In like 40 days, we've got to come up with an answer to the budget and the appropriations in order to keep the country open. Yeah, we're going to be back with our feet in the fire about mid-November. And we're going to have to come up with some kind of compromise so we can put the budget together or the appropriations and just get it done. Now, there is a possibility they could just extend it again now into maybe December or whatever it is. But at some point, they've got to get it done. And this should be an easy fix, if not for the Republicans and their willingness to throw this country in chaos and obviously maybe even shut down the government just to create that chaos. We have a lot of people on the Republican side who are not patriots, who are not Americans. They don't want to see us thrive. They don't want this country and the government to succeed. They want to tear it down. Maybe somehow they think they can build it back up in their own image. Yeah, that's not going to go well. It's not going to happen. Because by the time they even figure out what the fuck they're doing, it'll be 2024. The Democrats will take the House and the Senate, and then they're fucked. They're done. Not only are they going to be unable to do anything, they are also going to be looking at retribution for the crimes and the bullshit they've committed. Now, in New York, we've got the big court case going on there. It is a civil lawsuit brought by Latitia James against Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Don Jr., Alan Weisselberg, the company, and a few other people. She's got the evidence, she's got the witnesses, and Donald Trump has showed up for the first 3 days of the court case, which was a little surprising because he doesn't usually show up to those sorts of things, but he has. And yesterday, it was starting to get to him. I mean, he has an issue with attention deficit disorder. He has a tough time sitting still. He's probably packed in a lot of Adderall and extra strength diapers because this is not his thing. He's not good at this. And yesterday, he was a little irritated. Now, the day before, Judge Engeron imposed a limited gag order. He didn't seem to like that. And he didn't really follow it either. Now, we don't know if Engeron is going to do anything to him, but the fact is, Latitia James did. New York Attorney General Latitia James declared the Donald Trump show is over. Wednesday, shortly after the former president railed against her and Judge Arthur Engeron while on his way out of the Manhattan courthouse. This is what Donald Trump said. I'm here, stuck here, and I can't campaign. I would rather be in Iowa right now. I'd rather be in New Hampshire or South Carolina or Ohio or a lot of other places, but I'm stuck here because I have a corrupt attorney general, and the judge already knows what he's going to do. He's a Democrat judge. In all fairness to him, he has no choice. He has no choice. He's run by the Democrats, which isn't true. This judge is actually a very good judge, but Donald Trump's getting squeezed here. I know in court yesterday, they were talking to one of his accountants from the company Mazer, and this accountant was kind of spilling his guts. It made Donald Trump a little twitchy, a little nervous. He was visually and verbally getting out of hand. He was putting his arms around across his chest. He was grunting and groaning and throwing his hands up. This is not the kind of behavior you want to do in court, especially when they're coming to get you, and especially when there's only a judge to decide your fate. Donald Trump keeps talking about shit about the no jury. And frankly, the fact that there's no jury is his fault, but he still wants to complain about it. I fucked up, but I'm mad at you. Yeah, it makes no sense. Now, James addressed Trump's tirade after he departed for Florida. Yeah, he left New York. He went to Florida. And we'll talk about that in a moment, because he's really not allowed to do that in this situation, but not for this court case. Latitia James said Mr. Trump's comments were offensive, they were baseless, they were void of any facts and or any evidence. What they were comments that unfortunately fomented violence, comments that would be described as race baiting, comments, unfortunately, that appeals to the bottom of our humanity. I will not be bullied. And so Mr. Trump is no longer here. The Donald Trump show is over. And it sounds like she said, get the fuck out of here. Don't come back. And we know he's headed back to Florida. Well, he's got more court tomorrow. There'll be more things going on tomorrow. Now, the fact of the matter is, he isn't required to be in court for this lawsuit. He isn't required to. But he has another situation. He has a lawsuit against Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen did something that he wasn't expecting. Michael Cohen said, I'd like to depose Donald Trump since he's suing me. Well, Donald Trump does not want to be deposed, especially by Michael Cohen, because he knows what the fuck is going to happen. So in order to get out of that, he said, oh, geez, I can't do it because I got to be in court in New York for this lawsuit. Love to do it, but I'm going to be in court. And the deposition was scheduled for October 9th. Today is October 5th. And he blew out of court with a little help from Latitia James. So now he'd be free. So basically, the motion he issued to the lawsuit he's involved in with Michael Cohen is now not true. He is going to be available. He could be there for the deposition, but he doesn't want to be. And this may be part of Donald Trump's concerns and anger, because he's kind of caught in a trap here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Michael Cohen deposition, if there is one. I have a feeling that at some point here very soon, Donald Trump's going to drop that case so he doesn't have to be deposed. The reason he was doing it is because Michael Cohen is likely to be a witness in the lawsuit brought by Latitia James, and he's trying to intimidate him. You notice something about Donald Trump, all his attempts to intimidate people, not working anymore. Now, Judge Engoron imposed a partial gag order on Trump Tuesday after the former president attacked the judge's law clerk on Truth Social and in campaign emails. The gag order did not apply to today's comments about James or the judge. So he gave a very narrow gag order. And what he said about James or the judge did not violate that gag order. But that's not to say that the judge will expand that gag order and he won't be able to do that anymore. And then when Donald Trump can't bitch about his prosecutors and about his judges, then what's he going to do? Now, Trump attended 3 days of the trial and has reportedly claimed he's being taken off the campaign trail by being forced to attend, which is patently false. The former president is not legally compelled to attend the court hearings until he testifies in his civil fraud case, which he has called a sham. Of course, he called it a sham. We know that James is seeking $250 million and assurances that neither Trump nor his adult sons will be able to conduct business in New York. And this has got all of them pretty nervous. There was some video taken of Eric Trump and he was biting his fingernails. Never saw Eric Trump bite his fingernails, but he should be nervous. He knows his dad's going to be taken down, but Eric and Don Jr. are part of who is being sued. So this is going to come out of Eric and Don Jr.'s ass as well. Now, before the trial began, Judge Engoron ruled that Trump and his sons, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., did commit business fraud. That's already been decided. They're already guilty or liable for business fraud. The trial is still necessary, however, to decide the scope of the penalty plus 6 remaining causes of action alleged by the New York Attorney General. Trump is appealing the pretrial ruling, but it's not going anywhere. It's just not going anywhere. Donald Trump is categorically fucked. He's already been found to have committed numerous cases of fraud over years and years and years, and so have Eric and Don Jr. They're not going to get out of this clean. At this point, all they can fight for is getting a smaller judgment. But that judgment is likely to be at minimum $250 million, which is more than Don Jr. or Eric has. In addition to that, they're going to be dissolving the companies as part of the Trump organization. And there are literally hundreds of LLCs. Receivers are going to be appointed, and their job is to strictly dissolve these companies. You can see it's getting to Donald Trump. And as I've said before, it's not so much the money with Donald Trump. It's about the image. Donald Trump is all about image. If Donald Trump is not rich, famous, powerful, and have a lot of property, he's nobody. At least in his mind, that's what he believes. And he's very close to becoming nobody. And then what? And then what happens? Well, as I've said before, when Donald Trump is pushed in a corner, or anybody like Donald Trump is pushed in a corner, that's when things get dangerous. That's when things get crazy. You think Donald Trump has been crazy to this point? Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. See, in his little mind, he still believes that he can talk his way out of things, or he can bully his way out of things. I think he still believes that. Maybe yesterday it was starting to hit home that everything I'm doing is not working, so maybe I'm fucked here. But Donald Trump is delusional. He has delusions of grandeur. That's why he told people that he was a billionaire when he wasn't even close. This is why he says his properties are Mona Lisa property, so they're invaluable. It could be any amount I choose. Well, that's all bullshit, and that's what this court case is all about. You don't get to pick and choose the value of your properties. They are what they are. And in one of his comments after court today, or maybe it was during the break, he basically admitted to tax fraud. They were talking about how he was overinflating the value of his properties. And then he was talking about, hell, I probably underinflated them. This is not a big deal. No bank suffered. Nobody lost money on this deal, which is probably not true. But he started suggesting I didn't overinflate my properties. I undervalued my properties. Well, when it comes to the banks and the insurance companies, should that be true? Yeah, maybe he'd have an argument. But the problem with that is when you lessen the value of your properties, well, then it's tax fraud because you took it to the IRS and said your properties were worth less than they actually were. So he admits to tax fraud. This is what Donald Trump does whenever he talks. And it's always funny seeing him give these little speeches after he comes out of court because all his lawyers are all around him and he's saying the most egregious shit. He's implicating himself. And you don't see those lawyers flinch one bit. It's like they're right on board. They believe everything he's saying. It's fucking crazy. And these lawyers are going to end up having some trouble too. They've already been reprimanded by pretty much every judge they stood in front of. There have been a lot of lawyers that have been sanctioned. These lawyers in the case, in the civil suit in New York, each one of those lawyers has been sanctioned $7,500 that they have to pay by the end of this month. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops, especially with Donald Trump not being there. You might think that because he's in Florida or Ohio or Iowa, he can say these things and get away with it. But that's not the case. He doesn't like confrontation, so he won't do it in New York anymore. But he's too stupid to understand that it's no different when he's in some other state. All right. Now, we talked about Kevin McCarthy being vacated from his job as Speaker of the House. It was a surprise to me. I'll give you that. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I was wrong because I believed that they wouldn't let him get vacated. I really didn't think that would happen. I would think the Republicans would somehow save him by one vote or something. It was the only thing to make sense in order to get anything done in the House of Representatives. But clearly, the Republicans don't care about that. They're not worried about getting anything done. All they're worried about is owning the libtards, impeachment trials, and now trying to find another Speaker of the House. The question is, who is that? Nobody really knows. As I say, Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise say they're going to throw their hat in the ring to be the Speaker of the House. I don't personally think that either one has a chance of being the Speaker of the House. Now, that said, there is somebody with more information about the House of Representatives than I have. Former Representative Adam Kinzinger, Republican from Illinois, said he believes his former Republican colleagues will elect Jim Jordan of Ohio, the next Speaker of the House. Now, he was appearing on Wednesday's AC 360 on CNN. Kinzinger gamed out what's next for the House GOP conference after Representative Kevin McCarthy was stripped of his speakership on Tuesday. As I say, he was a representative. He would know better than me, but who knows? It's all a crapshoot. Now, McCarthy pissed off Matt Gaetz and 7 other Republicans who joined 208 Democrats to oust him. Jordan and Majority Leader Steve Scalise have declared their candidacies for the position, which during McCarthy's tenure needed only one member to force a vote on the Speaker's fate. Now, here's the interesting thing you need to understand. Whoever takes over this job as Speaker of the House, they also have that rule hanging over their head. It wasn't just for Kevin McCarthy. If Jim Jordan doesn't do exactly what MAGA thinks, if he's the Speaker of the House, they're going to drop the hammer on him too. Now, Anderson Cooper asked, do you think the next speaker, whether it's Jim Jordan, Steve Scalise, or someone else, will have to cut deals with the far-right members in the same way? Kinzinger said, will they have to agree to the same? You know, one person can vacate the chair. And Kinzinger said, I think so. I mean, I think the only way that changes is if we go a month without a speaker and we have multiple races, and eventually people are desperate to put a speaker in. Kinzinger went on to say he believes Jordan is going to be in the catbird seat on this. And this is how he explained it. I think if it is a secret ballot, Steve Scalise would win overwhelmingly, or anybody but Jordan. But what you're going to start seeing, Anderson, is on the emails, on the fundraising, on other cable news networks, Jim is going to be now the new litmus test of, are you a true conservative or not? Steve Scalise won't be. It will be Jim Jordan. And so there'll be a slow acquiescence of everybody to Jim Jordan. That's my prediction. I certainly hope for the country I'm wrong, but I also say this. If he becomes speaker, it will be interesting to see how a shut it all down kind of guy actually governs a country. Well, that's interesting for him to say. The fact of the matter, the Republicans and the Speaker of the House, previous Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, they didn't do any governing. All they did is stirring shit. Jim Jordan's not going to be any better. Some people might be fearful if Jim Jordan became Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy was only a little bit smoother, a little more articulate Jim Jordan. Kevin McCarthy was no better than Jim Jordan. Kevin McCarthy bent to MAGA, to the Freedom Caucus. So if Jim Jordan does get in, we're not going to see a lot different than what we saw with Kevin McCarthy. The only real difference is, as dumb as Kevin McCarthy is, he's still smarter than Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan gets up every day, goes to the Capitol, has a hearing, embarrasses himself every day. Now, the other interesting thing we have to consider with Jim Jordan is when those superseding indictments come out from Jack Smith. He was part of that whole mess on January 6th. He spoke to Donald Trump a number of times on January 6th. Might he get an indictment? Are the Republicans willing to risk having a Speaker of the House getting an indictment, being charged with felonies? If he does get indicted, he won't be able to be Speaker of the House. There's a rule that says if you have been indicted for a felony, you cannot be in leadership in the House of Representatives. This becomes a bigger factor in another story that I've got coming up after the break. So remember that. It's called Rule 26. We'll talk about that. And Rule 26 says nobody can be in leadership in the House of Representatives if they're indicted with a crime. Now, Jim Jordan has yet to be indicted, but it could happen very soon. In fact, I'm guessing that with all this stuff going on with the Speaker of the House, Jack Smith might speed things up a little bit just to shut down these fuckers that are insurrectionists so they don't get a chance to be part of leadership. I may be wrong about that, but I have a feeling that it may be kind of a motivator to get these superseding indictments out. That said, Jack Smith's going to do what Jack Smith's going to do regardless. I don't know that he's going to be pressured by politics, but it would be nice if we took Jim Jordan out of the equation, not only in leadership, but also out of the House of Representatives. He's done nothing. He's accomplished nothing. He's just a shit stir. And frankly, the Republican caucus at this point in the House is in total chaos. They don't even know what the fuck they're doing. They have no fucking clue what they're doing. So I hope Adam Kinzinger is wrong, but if he isn't wrong, I wouldn't worry about it too much because he's just going to be another Kevin McCarthy, except dumber, and he'll not get anything accomplished, much like Kevin McCarthy did. Bottom line here is nothing's really going to change dramatically until the election in 2024. The Republicans are obstructionist and they are going to stop everything and attempt to do nothing up until they have to. By the time they realize they have to, they'll be out of power and then they'll be inconsequential. So we'll see. We'll see what the fuck happens there. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. When we talk about Republicans, crazy conspiracy theories seem to be standard fare. That's all they do is they talk about bullshit, most of it untrue or most of it just not possible, but they still spew it. They think they're freaking out Democrats and scaring them, and that's their only strategy, to be a bully and scare them into submission. Unfortunately for the Republicans, that hasn't been working. Well, there's a new rumor out when it comes to getting a new Speaker of the House. I'm getting a lot of people asking me about it. And the fact of the matter is, there's really no need to worry about it. But nonetheless, people are hearing that the Republicans are going to draft Donald Trump to be Speaker of the House. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to happen. It almost can't happen. It's not going to happen. Now, despite his constant toadying to the former president, McCarthy could not hold on to the job he was coveting. And the interesting thing about Kevin McCarthy not being able to hold the job, that is pretty standard for Republicans in the House of Representatives. They don't really know how to be House of Representatives speakers. Over the last 40 years, none of them have lasted an extended period of time, like Newt Gingrich, like any of them. They always get forced out by their own kind. Now, the one guy that lasted the longest as Speaker of the House, Republican, was a guy by the name of Dennis Hastert. Remember him? Yeah, he stuck in the longest as a Speaker of the House. But then he left, and of course, he was convicted of sexual abuse of minors. Yeah. That's all the Republicans have ever been able to do. They can't keep speakers of the House. They keep pushing them out themselves. And the one guy that they thought was the best happens to be a pedophile. Nice. Now, a lot of people are thinking Donald Trump might be appointed Speaker of the House. Now, it's important to understand, for whatever reason, you don't have to be a member of the House of Representatives to be named Speaker of the House. They can name virtually anyone. Some people have thought, well, maybe the Democrats and the Republicans get together, a few Republicans, and they make Liz Cheney the Speaker of the House. That would make the Republicans' fucking heads explode. Anyway, there's one serious mind in the House of Representatives that is supporting Donald Trump, and that is Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she wrote on her Twitter account, or X, or whatever the fuck. Does anybody even still go there? I don't know. I don't. She wrote this: the only candidate for Speaker I'm currently supporting is President Donald J. Trump. He will end the war in Ukraine. He will secure the border. He will end the politically weaponized government. He will make America energy independent again. He will pass my bill to stop transgender surgery on kids and keep men out of women's sports. You know, it's funny, Margie. he had the job for 4 years and he did none of that shit. Of course, the Ukraine war wasn't going on at that time, but we had the war in Afghanistan that he claimed he was going to stop. He had a plan to stop it, but he couldn't find the time to do it. He left it to Joe Biden, who did exactly what Donald Trump had laid out. And then Donald Trump complained that it was a bad idea. Well, it was his fucking idea. Now, Green continued, he will support our military and police. You mean like approving promotions and appointments in the military like you fucks aren't doing right now? He has a proven 4-year record as president of the United States of America. What record? What did he do? What has he done? You think just because you say that people will believe you. And granted, there are some stupid motherfuckers out there that will believe you, but the vast majority of people in this country know Donald Trump is a do nothing, know nothing, corrupt fucking criminal insurrectionist. He received a record number of Republican votes of any Republican presidential candidate. We can make him speaker and then elect him president. He will make America great again. And again, the question is, great, when was it great before? It certainly wasn't the 4 years Donald Trump was in office. Now, of course, Trump was president of the United States for 4 years, 2 of those years with total control, and did none of these things. He had total control, no reason not to get anything done, and he still didn't do it. Still, the idea of him coming back may not be completely far-fetched. During his Tuesday night show, Sean Hannity claimed that Trump could be open to the idea of becoming speaker. However, as I was talking about earlier, a couple problems with that. First of all, somebody talked to him about it, and he seemed non-committal. It wasn't like he was jumping on board right away. I mean, this is a job where he'd have to do something, know something, get involved, and help out his party. Donald Trump doesn't want any of that. When he was president, all he was worried about was his performance, how he looked, ratings. He never actually did anything that was accomplished, good or bad, while he was president. Somebody else did. He signed his name and took the credit, if there was credit to be had. So a handful of Republicans have floated the possibility of electing former President Trump as the next House Speaker, but that may not be possible under current GOP House conference rules. As I stated before, Rule 26, the platform previously known as Twitter, put out shortly after Republicans started talking about backing Trump to replace former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who was ousted from his leadership position. Many users pointed out that since the former president is under numerous felony indictments, he may not be able to serve in Republican leadership based on this rule. While the House Speaker is not required to be a sitting member of Congress, it's still highly unlikely that Trump could garner enough House Republican votes to actually become Speaker. Here's what to know about the rule. Rule 26, included in the House Republican Conference rules of the 118th Congress, which was approved in January. It states that a member of the Republican leadership shall step aside if indicted for a felony for which a sentence of 2 or more years imprisonment might be imposed. According to Rule 2, the Speaker is included in the definition of the leadership alongside the Republican leader, the Republican whip, the chair of the Republican Conference, the chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee, the chair of the Committee on Policy, the vice chair of the Republican Conference, and the secretary of the Republican Conference. Now, the current rules suggest that Trump could not hold a role in Republican leadership, including the speakership, since he has been indicted on numerous felonies that can carry at least 2 years of imprisonment sentences. We know Donald Trump is facing 91 criminal charges so far, spread among 4 states and federal criminal indictments. Separately, he is also a party in more than a half a dozen civil lawsuits. However, it's not clear that this rule would prevent members from simply nominating him for the role. The GOP conference is slated to meet next week to determine who should get the gavel next. I got to tell you, Donald Trump doesn't seem too excited about this. I mean, you just think about it for a second. He's got civil lawsuits. E. Jean Carroll, Latitia James. He's got 4 indictments across the country. Plus, he's also running for president without any money. Please explain to me where he would have the time to be in the House of Representatives every day to be the Speaker of the House. How does that even make any sense? And I think Donald Trump realizes he's got bigger things that are important to him as opposed to going to the House of Representatives with all his fanboys and fangirls. Not going to happen. People are worried about it. There's just not enough to make it reasonable to do. Donald Trump even knows it's not reasonable. He won't say that, but he kind of inkled, well, I'll be happy to help him any way I can, but there might be some other people that are good too. That's what he said. That's not what Donald Trump would say if he wanted to be the Speaker of the House. He'd be campaigning for it hard now. It's unlikely a Trump nomination would reach the votes necessary to make him Speaker. That's the other thing. He'd need 218 votes. Democrats certainly aren't going to vote for him, and he's not going to get 218 in the Republican Party. People are tired of him and tired of Matt Gaetz. They want to get away from this fuck. They're not going to throw themselves back in the fire again. Now, a majority of the House conference can vote to change their own rules, but it is rare that they would do so in the middle of a session. Typically, rules are decided at the start of each session, which is in January. And they're going to need to come up with a speaker well before then. Now, some of the people that are supporting Donald Trump as a possible speaker include Representative Troy Nehls of Texas. He's going to nominate Trump. Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene, Greg Steube also said that they would back Trump for Speaker. McCarthy revealed Tuesday that he would not run for the speakership again, leaving the door open for other Republicans to toss their hat in the ring. Now, here's something I thought about and I mentioned before, and I'll do it again because it may be a desperation move. If they start trying to elect speakers of the House and they just can't get it done, they just can't get it done at all, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that the Republicans would go hat in hand back to McCarthy and say, all right, take the job again. We can't find anybody else. It would kill them to do that, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least. Now, even though these Republicans voiced support for Trump as Speaker, the former president has said he would not be interested in taking the job. And that makes sense. Why would he be interested in taking the job? He said, no, I think that's not something I wanted. A lot of people bring it up. It's brought up to me all the time, he said last March. No, it's not something I want to do. I want to look at what's happening, and then we're going to be doing something else. No, it's not something I would be interested in. That's what he said in March. Now, if he thought he could get out of his court cases by becoming Speaker of the House, he might be all in for it. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't stop those cases and doesn't save him at all. And at this point, his only focus is finding a way to save his life and his money and his power. And it doesn't look good as it is. The last thing he needs is something else making his situation worse or more complex. So those of you that are worried that Donald Trump will be the next Speaker of the House, don't worry about that. That's not going to fucking happen. Think about this, and I've said this before too. The only reason people might be afraid that Donald Trump would become Speaker of the House is because of what the Republicans are saying. We know the Republicans fail at every turn. Every idea they come up with goes down the shitter, and they're all pathological liars. So don't listen to these fucks and don't get upset about it, because that's what they want. They want to scare you so they can bowl you over. Don't allow that. Don't do that, because they're always wrong. Let's talk about Rudy Giuliani briefly. And this is an interesting story. We're finding out now that Rudy Giuliani has a little drinking problem. Well, maybe not little. He's drinking all the time. And I'm guessing with all the pressure he has now, the fact that he's going broke, I'm thinking he's drinking even more right now. He'd almost have to be. Now, Rudy Giuliani's apparent drinking issues might tank one of Donald Trump's main legal defenses in the criminal cases targeting his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. It may not help him. According to a report from the New York Times, special counsel Jack Smith's office has questioned witnesses about Giuliani's alcohol consumption on and after election night, also asking whether Trump was aware his lawyer was impaired while advising him. Now, the story cited multiple accounts of Giuliani's consistent, conspicuous intoxication, noted that Trump, a non-drinker, had privately spoken derisively about Giuliani's alcohol use, according to a person familiar with the remarks who spoke with the Times. Trump's knowledge of Giuliani's drinking could undermine his expected advice of counsel defense. See, what he would want to do is say, well, I didn't know Rudy was a drunk. I was just doing what my lawyer told me. Well, now we know, and it will be proven that he was aware of Giuliani's problem. You have to understand, people are asking this question: why would he listen to somebody who's crazy like Sidney Powell? He said she was crazy. Why would he listen to a drunk like Rudy Giuliani, as opposed to all the other lawyers that were telling him something different? Well, I'll tell you why. Because those two were only giving him the information he wanted to hear. He didn't want to hear the truth or the facts or the law from the other lawyers. He chose Giuliani and Sidney Powell in spite of their debilitations, because they were saying what he wanted to hear. Thing is, if he was aware Giuliani was inebriated while advising him, it would be difficult for the former president to say he was simply acting in accordance with his professional legal guidance when pushing claims of a stolen election. See, this is the very same thing he's trying to do in this lawsuit. When the accountant was on the witness stand yesterday, Donald Trump and his lawyers were trying to say, well, these accountants they fucked up. They fucked up. I didn't know anything about this. The problem with that defense is that Mazars is a pretty big accounting firm, a multi-million-dollar accounting firm. They have quite a stellar reputation. And the idea that Mazar and these accountants specifically did illegal things that only benefited Donald Trump is absolutely ridiculous. See, what Donald Trump did, he just wrote down what the values on his properties were and handed them to the accountant. The accountant isn't in a position or needs to investigate whether his client is lying to him. They're doing his taxes. So this defense is not going to work there. And when it comes to lawyers maybe giving him bad advice, if he knew Sidney Powell was a little crazy because he said it, or if he knew that Rudy Giuliani was a drunk, then that defense just goes down the shitter. Now, in further interviews with the New York Times, Giuliani's friends, associates, and former aides appeared to agree the former mayor of New York's drinking had intensified his existing inclination of conspiracyism, gullibility, and a weakness for grandeur. And I can tell you this, people wonder, how does Rudy Giuliani, once well respected, start getting sucked into these crazy fucking thoughts about election fraud? And it has to be with the drinking. When you're drinking, you make bad choices. And when you make bad choices, it's hard to admit that you were wrong or that you have a drinking problem. So then you just keep doubling and tripling down. This is what caused Rudy Giuliani to go to the dark side, if you will. I know from my years, and this was 32 years ago when I was drinking, and I don't know that I'd reached the level of alcoholism, but I knew I was headed that way, and I had other responsibilities. So I said, "Fuck it," I quit. I didn't go through any programs or anything. I just stopped. Had I been an alcoholic, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I'm thankful that I caught it early. But when you're drinking like that all the time, you make some bad decisions. And then you make more bad decisions in order to cover for your first bad decisions. And then things just spin out of control. This is always the case with people that deal with alcoholism or drug addiction. They start in this spiral down to the ground, and there seems to be no way out. And when there's no way out, they just keep trying to double and triple down. And I'm sure that's what Rudy Giuliani was doing in this situation. Now, Andrew Stein, a former New York City Council president who has known Giuliani for decades, told the Times, "It's no secret, nor do I him any favors if I don't mention that problem, because he has it. It's actually one of the saddest things I can think about in politics." Ted Goodman, political advisor for Mayor Rudy Giuliani, disputed the accounts in a statement, telling both HuffPost and the Times, "I've been with the mayor on a regular basis for the past year, and the idea that he is an alcoholic is a flat-out lie." I'm not buying it. Giuliani is currently facing an array of financial and legal problems. He, along with Trump and 17 others, have been charged with racketeering. Here's the thing. If you say he's not an alcoholic, then please explain to me how he went from America's mayor to this corrupt piece of shit, this sexual abusing piece of shit. How did he go from one spot to the other spot over a period of years? Did his personality change? Did he immediately get crazy? Or is there something else? And the only other thing it could be is drugs or alcohol. Now, Rudy Giuliani was ordered to pay two election workers $133,000 after losing a civil trial for defamation in August, and is currently being sued by his former lawyers over $1.4 million in unpaid fees. Giuliani has been accused of sexual misconduct by two former associates, being sued by Hunter Biden for hacking into his lost laptop that belonged to President Joe Biden's son. Now, despite his reputation for erratic media appearances, America's mayor claimed during a 2021 exchange with NBC New York that he'd never given an interview drunk. He says, "I like scotch." He said, "I'm not an alcoholic. I am functioning. I probably function more effectively than 90% of the population." Now, I got to tell you, man, if you want to compare me to him, you don't function better than I do. You don't function better than anybody who listens to the Rational Boomer podcast. You may be functioning, but you're a functioning alcoholic. And even still, if you're functioning, the fact of the matter is that you're making bad choices and bad decisions. And the proof is in the pudding. Look where you are. You've been indicted for crimes. You've been sued for amounts of money that you cannot afford to pay back. Yet not that long ago, you were the country's mayor. Explain to me how that goes. Because we know that you're a consummate liar. This whole election fraud thing has been proven to be a bunch of bullshit. Yet here you are. If not alcohol, then what? What has caused you to take this drop, this dive in your life, in your career, in your financial status? Not alcohol. What is it? All right. I wanted to talk about this because this is going to be an interesting story. This is a very petty fucking story. Now, within hours of Kevin McCarthy being ousted as Speaker of the House late Tuesday afternoon, his hand-picked acting successor, U.S. Representative Patrick McHenry, a Republican from North Carolina, comes out on stage. He's this little guy in a gray suit and a bow tie. As I said on TikTok, he looks like a fascist Pee Wee Herman. Now, what he did was he ordered Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi to vacate her Capitol Hill offices by today. By today. Or maybe it was yesterday. Anyway, she's in California attending the memorial services for Dianne Feinstein. So she can't get back in time. What would be the point of him going after not only Nancy Pelosi, but Representative Stoyer, too? McHenry, who's titled technically now is Speaker pro tempore, is a staunch McCarthy ally who worked diligently behind the scenes in January to help the now former Speaker get elected on the 15th attempt, had an aide issue the order. Of course he did. He can't do it himself, you gutless piece of shit. So this is what he said. Please vacate the space tomorrow. The room will be rekeyed, wrote a top aide on the Republican-controlled House Administration Committee. Politico reported Tuesday night the room was being reassigned by the acting speaker for speaker office use. Politico adds that House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' staff helped Pelosi's office make the move, according to a spokesperson for the former speaker. Pelosi, who was honored with the title Speaker Emerita in 2022 by the House Steering and Policy Committee in an effort to help unite the House, did not vote for or against McCarthy's ouster. She remained in California to attend the funeral of her friend and colleague, the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. But Pelosi, the first and only woman Speaker of the House who served from 2007 to 2011 and again from 2019 to 23, did not take McHenry's order lying down. Not surprised. Nancy Pelosi's probably going to kick that pipsqueak's ass. This is what she said. With all of the important decisions that the new Republican leadership must address, which we are all eagerly awaiting, one of the first actions taken by the new Speaker pro tempore was to order me to immediately vacate my office in the Capitol. Pelosi said this in a statement, according to Politico. Sadly, because I'm in California to mourn the loss and pay tribute to my dear friend Dianne Feinstein, I'm unable to retrieve my belongings at this time. This eviction is a sharp departure from tradition. As Speaker, I gave former Speaker Hastert a significantly larger suite of offices for as long as he wished, she noted. Office space doesn't matter to me, but it seems important to them. Now the new Republican leadership has settled this important matter. Let's hope they get to work on what's truly important to the American people. Yeah. That's the Republicans, petty as fuck, not focusing on the important things at hand, like getting this budget and appropriation thing figured out. They've got to do it by mid-November. They're now at about 40 days, but they took the week off and won't come back until next Wednesday. And when they do come back on next Wednesday, they're going to try to elect a Speaker of the House, which could take weeks based on what we saw with Kevin McCarthy, if they can do it at all. So when they come back Wednesday, that'll put them at 35 days to get this budget and appropriations bill set up. But first, they're going to try to get a Speaker of the House. So however long that takes, even if it only takes a week. Now we're down to what, 28 days to get this done. They had 6 months previously, and they pulled it all together in the last minute. Now they're wasting time doing things that really don't matter or shouldn't be done and avoiding the work of the people of this country. That is the Republican Party. They're obstructionists. They don't do anything. And all of us are worse for it. We're not being served by the very people who have been put in positions to serve us. Now, there's one guy that everybody seems to hate, Democrats and the Republicans. That would be Matt Gaetz. There's even talk that they're thinking about trying to expel Matt Gaetz. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure. But there's a guy named Mark Short. He's the former Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff and former chief of staff for the House Republican caucus, accused Matt Gaetz on Wednesday of having ulterior motives while presenting himself as a fiscally conservative legislature. The people who were masquerading as fiscal conservatives really aren't, Short said on CNN's The Lead, the day after Gaetz orchestrated the removal of Representative Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Get this quote. I love this quote. Matt Gaetz to say he came here as a fiscal crusader, it's more likely he came here for the teenage interns on Capitol Hill, to be honest. Ooh, that's kind of cutting for a Republican to say. Now, Gaetz is the subject of a House Ethics Committee investigation into alleged sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, and bribery. That probe originally began in 2021, but was put on hold while the Department of Justice began its own sex trafficking investigation due to allegations that Gaetz had sex with a 17-year-old girl. The DOJ, for whatever reason, ultimately decided against filing charges, and Gaetz has denied all allegations against him, even though there's a witness and a lot of evidence. Now, in voting to put an end to McCarthy's 9-month stint as Speaker, Gaetz cited McCarthy siding with Democrats on a deal to temporarily fund the government and avoid a shutdown last week, a deal that didn't make nearly enough spending cuts that Gaetz and some others wanted McCarthy to do. But Gaetz' reasoning, Short argued Wednesday, doesn't hold up. He has voted for continuing resolutions. He has voted for omnibus bills. He voted for trillions of dollars in COVID spending. Even this year, he put forward an earmark, and yet he has presented himself as, I'm doing this for the fiscal benefit of the country, Short said. That's not honest. The guy just has a distaste for Kevin and used the rules to dethrone him. After Tuesday's unprecedented vote, Gaetz went on Fox News and denied that he has a personal animus toward his colleague. Matt Gaetz is just a foul human being. How he got elected to his position is impossible to understand. Just impossible. He may get expelled, but not for the sexual abuse or anything like that. It will be because he stepped on too many toes in the Republican Party. I mean, the Republicans hate this motherfucker. They don't like the fact that he put the Republican Party in the House in this position, a position without a speaker, in amidst a bunch of chaos and bullshit. The Republican Party looks foolish in this situation, and that can be laid directly at the feet of Matt Gaetz, and that's why they hate him. So it's going to be interesting to see if they, in fact, do expel him, and that's saying something, because they didn't expel Marjorie Taylor Greene for her behavior, Lauren Boebert for her behavior, George Santos for his behavior. They didn't expel any of them because they've got too small a majority, and they didn't want to risk losing the majority. But somehow with Matt Gaetz, they're thinking too much, too far. We got to get rid of him. We'll see if they actually accomplish that. We know that Republicans have trouble accomplishing anything. One name we haven't heard too much about is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He's urged the House Republicans to ditch a rule that led to the stunning downfall of Kevin McCarthy from the speakership, warning it would make any future speaker's job impossible. I have no advice to give the House Republicans except one. I hope whoever the next speaker is gets rid of the motion to vacate. And he's right about that. If there's always going to be a small faction of people that will hold this over any speaker's head, nobody's going to be able to do anything. I'm going to vote you in to be speaker, but if you don't do it my way, we're going to kick you out. They made the point with Kevin McCarthy, and anybody who takes the speaker's job that happens to be a Republican is going to have to be leery of it. They're going to have to make some hard decisions, and those hard decisions will go against MAGA in order to save themselves. And when they do that, they'll get the same treatment as Kevin McCarthy. Now, Mitch McConnell added, to do that job for anyone, you have to get rid of the motion to vacate because it puts whoever the speaker is in a hammerlock of dysfunction, potential dysfunction. The motion to vacate the chair is a rarely used procedural tool that Matt Gaetz utilized earlier this week. Now, you wouldn't see the Democrats doing something like this. They just wouldn't. They're going to try to unify the caucus. The Republicans may or may not want to unify their caucus, but without doing that, they can get nothing accomplished. And any Speaker of the House is going to be in trouble. If not MAGA, if this next speaker sides with MAGA all the time, then the normal Republicans have the opportunity as well to vacate the position. It's just going to go back and forth. It's going to be a shit show and nothing will get done, which is right in line with what Republicans do, but it's not good for the House of Representatives, certainly not good for this country. All right, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.